Good evening and good night and hello and farewell, all in one evening. Many of our students do not quite understand what we mean when we say that it is not our wish or desire to create a new religion or a new religious body, or to leave behind anything in the nature of a new religion or a new religious body. But each student, for the sake of their own spiritual demonstration, must learn the exact meaning of that and why it is so definite that there cannot be an infinite way organization or church, institution, or anything of an organized nature. It has to do primarily with this, that one of the main functions of the infinite way is to destroy your faith in anything and everything, so that if you were out in the middle of the sea or up in the air or in a desert, and you had no church and you had no person and you had no book, you wouldn't even have a tinge of regret, because you would have so thoroughly realized where God is, I am. And that's really all that matters. My inseparability from God, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the outer appearances. If only the infinite way can break our faith and dependence upon anything of an external nature and reveal to our students and through them to the world that the kingdom of God is within you. It is neither low here nor low there. It is not in a holy mountain or a holy temple or a holy book or a holy person. The kingdom of God, allness, is within you. Now, I would not have you think that that is a personal wish of mine or desire, but I would have you understand that this is a command given to me with the functioning of the infinite way. And one day a man came to me and said, what would you do if someone, or even if I, for instance, should start an infinite way church down the street? And I said, nothing at all, just nothing at all. And he says, you know, I believe you and I'm afraid of that. And the principle that has given us, or that which has given us this principle, is its own protection. It doesn't need me to protect it. It doesn't need you to protect it. It never will need anything to protect it, because the principle itself is operating in consciousness and will do its own protecting. But I would like you to see this, that the infinite way is functioning in the way that was ordained for it. And that is to state these principles and restate some of the old ones so that they would be accepted and demonstrated in human consciousness, not merely in one particular organization, or one particular church, but that all of human consciousness would be able to receive it, respond to it, live it, and thereby make us all one in outer relationship as well as on the inner plane. Now, you who have been with us this month in one place or two or three or four, you have witnessed the relationship that exists between us, the harmony, the peace, the sharing, the joy. And those of you who have been with this work in other cities and other countries and have witnessed this same thing must now be able to realize that if this is possible for us, it is possible for all mankind if all mankind can know and accept these principles. Well, just to show you that progress is being made along that line, I'm going to repeat something that some of you already know and then tell you something new. And that is that ever since the art of meditation received a fine review in a Chicago newspaper and thereby came to the attention of the authorities of the Protestant churches, the art of meditation has been accepted and is on sale in many of these churches in the United States and the United Church in Canada. And of course, since then, practicing the presence, spiritual healing have followed. You'll be happy to know that recently the Church of England ordered 80 sets of Infinite Way writings for 80 chaplains in England. The next month that the Church of England ordered 14 sets of Infinite Way writings for chaplains in New Zealand. And when we were in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, I had a telephone call from the head librarian of the Los Angeles Public Libraries saying that the demand for the Infinite Way writings was so large that they required a large shipment of these books, and were they available. And this week the order came through for 51 copies of Thunder of Silence, 28 of Art of Spiritual Healing, and 27 of Practicing the Presence, 27 of Art of Meditation, and anywhere from 1 to 5 each of all the other titles. And this is in addition to what they already have on their shelves. And now hold your seats when I tell you that this morning we have word that our government is sending 20 people to Russia with a leader, and that they have been sent to Koinonia for spiritual training for 3 weeks, and that the international board decided that they should have 3 weeks of instruction and inspiration from the Thunder of Silence. No. I'm only telling you this, not for testimony, not to be praised. I would like you to see the meaning of no organization but the placing of specific principles in consciousness and permitting all those who are receptive and responsive to find them, utilize them, and change the nature of the world. That's all. I want you to see that these principles, which have brought such peace to quite a few thousand of us in many parts of the world, brought some measure of healing, some measure of supply, some measure of happiness, that these same principles are being so readily accepted by people outside of our circle. It is not surprising that some of the metaphysical movements are selling these books. Some of the metaphysical movements are using them in their work. This is not surprising because it is inevitable that with any kind of a metaphysical background that these principles should be clear, understandable, and acceptable. But the point is now, think of those who have not been exposed to metaphysical and spiritual teachings, who are so readily accepting them and certainly making use of them, making even nearer to us the experience of peace on earth. Because from our experience you can see that there could be no warfare between you and me or between each other of you. And that only means that when this spiritual bond, which already exists between all of us around the world, is realized as it is now realized among Infinite Way students, when this spiritual bond is universally realized, how can there be warfare, biases, bigotries, envies, hates? This all must end. And I'm sure that some of you know that we have right here in this class with us a young lady who was with us also in Los Angeles, going to Nigeria after having 2 Infinite Way classes, and undoubtedly meeting many of our students, ministers, who are already over there in Nigeria, Ghana, down into Rhodesia. You see what I mean? That if these principles are in human consciousness, we need no memberships. The bond between us is love and spirit. And this is far stronger than any material bond of human relationship. And so it is that above all things, as you leave this class, please remember that wherever the spirit is admitted into consciousness, there is a spiritual bond realized and demonstrated. And that it is not necessary to proselyte, it is not necessary to draw people together in an exclusive organization that has the truth, but the only need is to present the principles of truth wherever they might find a welcome. Some of our students have been very much responsible for this activity in placing these writings in public libraries and seminaries, prisons, hospitals. All of this has been an activity of placing the principles of truth in human consciousness and letting them do their work. This goes further in meaning. It places the responsibility for harmony not on the church you belong to, not on the minister, and not on a far-off God or even on a nearby God. It places the full responsibility upon us individually to know the truth, to abide in the truth, to let the truth abide in us. And then this truth, consciously realized, becomes a law of harmony unto us and unto those who come into our orbit, receptive and responsive. A question is here. When a religion tells its followers to pray each day and rule out of me all sin, is it not a mistake to admit that we are sinners? No, I don't think so. I think that we need that as a reminder, not necessarily every day, but occasionally we need to remind ourselves how far short we are falling in our human experience from our divine being, our divine estate. Of course, it is a very simple thing to make the absolute statement that I am the child of God, therefore perfect. I am spiritual. I am pure. Beautiful. Now measure your conduct up against that. And see how close they come together. And I'm sure you'll find that there's quite a wide space between what we spiritually are and know ourselves to be and that which we are demonstrating, showing forth, manifesting. And therefore, while I don't think it's necessary to remind ourselves that we have some measure of sin, I do believe that if we are following spiritual principles, the degree in which we fail to live up to that is quickly made apparent to us. We're brought face to face with it, and then we are able to realize I still have some place to go. I really like Paul's statement that I do not claim to have fully achieved. I do not claim that I have achieved the full degree of manhood, spiritual manhood, but forgetting those things which are behind, I'm certainly disciplining myself every day so that I come closer and closer to the realization of oneness. And you see, there's quite an important point there. I and my Father are one. All that the Father hath is mine. That is a wonderful statement of absolute truth. But are we all showing forth the full measure of Christhood? Have we all proven spiritual immortality, or do we once in a while catch cold and thereby prove that to that degree we still have clay feet? Do we not once in a while get a bit angry, resentful, fearful, thereby proving that we have not yet attained that full measure of manhood in Christ Jesus? Of course, none of us has accomplished the fullness of that demonstration. Many have accomplished it in their high moments of spiritual realization. Oh, that I agree. There are moments in meditation. There are moments in inner communion when we transcend the entire human experience and are showing forth the full measure of our spiritual identity. But these periods do not last forever. They last for a moment or an hour, in some cases for a day or 3 days, and then there comes what seems to be an awakening. It's really going back to sleep. and we find ourselves in some measure of humanness. Now, why are we on the spiritual path? Because we have not yet ruled out of us all sin. And I'm not speaking now of having made ourselves perfect humans, because that is not yet ruling out of us all sin. Sin is not merely human error. It's just as much of a sin to be humanly perfect. It's just as much a missing the mark of spiritual identity. Our work on the spiritual path isn't to learn the Ten Commandments and force ourselves to obey them. It isn't even to learn the Sermon on the Mount and force ourselves to obey them. That is part of our schooling, our discipline, to watch our step that we do obey those commandments and that Sermon on the Mount, but only as footsteps on the way. We are still in sin as long as we're subject to a cold. We are still in sin if we're subject to indigestion. Why? We're missing the mark of spiritual demonstration. For when we attain the realization of our true identity, and remember we do for short periods, during those short periods we are not subject to either material or mental conditions. We are completely free. We're not even in this body. Just think for a moment that when you go to the mirror and you say, I look well today, or I do not look well today, that you are convicting yourself of sin, because you can't see yourself in the mirror. And you are identifying yourself with your body. It's your body that looks well, or your body that doesn't look well, not you, because you aren't there. You are invisible and incorporeal. And remember this, God is spirit. Now what do you think the Son of God is? Or the daughter of God? Matter? Ah, no. The image and likeness of God is of the same nature and substance as God, and that is spiritual. Now, let us take the word I. You have never seen I. You have never seen me. All you see up here is my body, my outer form. But I am talking to you from within, and not from within this body, but from within my consciousness. Just using this body as the means of expression, using this voice. I am using my mind in talking to you. I am using my body, my throat, my voice, talking box, whatever it is. I am using this, but I am invisible to you. And as I look out here, I can only see your form, but not you. You are looking up here at me. Your body isn't. Your body can't see. Your body has no sight. Your body has no sensation, no feeling. It is you using the eyes to see. It is you using the fingers to feel, the body for sensation. It is you. But you aren't in the body. You are using the body. But this you that you are, this I that I am, is incorporeal, that is, without physical form. And in these moments of meditation or illumination, in a communion, I am so completely I that I am absent from the body, unaware of the body, and it would be impossible in those moments to feel any form of ill. I am then absent from the body and present with the Lord, since I and my Father are one, and I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, and all of this out of sight of you. So then, when you look in the mirror and say, I, and try to believe that this is sinless and pure, you're going way off the beam. It is only when your eyes are closed to the outer world that you can say, the I of me is the Son of God, the daughter of God, the child of God. The I of me is incorporeal and spiritual. I don't want to shock you, and yet I do want to tell you the truth. The I is sexless. The I has no sex whatsoever. And when you are in the Spirit, you are totally unaware of sex, whether of yourself or another. And it is for this reason that in the experience of reincarnation, it is just as possible to reincarnate a male or a female. Why? Because it is only the identity making use of a body. And it really is unimportant to the identity what the sex of the body may be. But I, the individual, am completely spiritual and incorporeal, and it is for this reason that in our writings you have noticed that God is very often referred to as it. Why? Can God be a male? Can God be female? Isn't that limitation? Indeed, that is limitation. And there is nothing unlimited, or rather, nothing limited in the nature of spirit. Then the image and likeness of God is likewise incorporeal, spiritual. And undoubtedly you'd find this, that the incorporeal individual is the embodiment of what we would call male and female qualities. Not sex, but qualities. And they would all be embodied in the one infinite individuality which is God individually manifested as man, individual man. So it is then that as long as we entertain thoughts of duality, as long as we entertain thoughts of good and evil, there certainly can be no harm in reminding ourselves once in a while that we still have something to go before we attain the fullness of our spiritual identity realized. Now, on the other hand, I could not approve of reminding yourself every day that you're a sinner, because it would seem to me that that is just building up within yourself a continuous state of sinfulness, or the memory of sinfulness, and this should not be necessary. On the other hand, I just as thoroughly disapprove of reminding yourself every day that you're good, because that leads to the inflation of the ego. And our work is not to remind ourselves that we're good or evil, Our work is not to remind ourselves that we're well or prosperous. That belonged to the earliest days of metaphysics, when there was no higher thought than just changing bad humanhood to good or sick humanhood to well. At our stage of unfoldment, we're not interested in whether we're good or bad or sick or well. We are interested in the realization of our spiritual identity. I and my Father are one. God is incorporeal, infinite spirit, and I am that. I am that. I am incorporeal, spiritual, not confined to time or space, not subject to external material influences. And so you find that the influence of your consciousness spreads further than your home. It begins to have an influence among your neighbors and friends and relatives. And the first thing you know, you begin to have an influence in town somewhere. And as you continue, you find mail coming to your doorstep, showing that the influence of your consciousness has reached beyond the borders of your own city. And there is no reason, if you can accept that God is infinite divine consciousness, and that means you, there is no reason why your influence should not become worldwide, why your consciousness should not be recognized in far places. If Lao Tzu, who lived more than 500 B.C. in a tiny village in China, could become as well known as he is throughout the world, or Buddha, 500 B.C. in India, and Jesus Christ, a little Hebrew rabbi, where? Out in a tiny little village in the Holy Lands. If these people could make themselves universally known, loved, respected, honored, why should there be limitation for anyone? Well, the answer is there is reason for limitation if you believe that you are confined to this body. If you believe that your influence is confined to your household. That's a terrible mistake, because often we have less influence in our own household than in far places. Do you not see? Yes, the prophet, as said, has no honor in his own country. That isn't always true, but it often is. However, the principle of the infinite way, which we would like to see known, understood, and demonstrated universally in every church and among those who never go into a church, is just this very thing. I and my Father are one, and I am that one. My consciousness is infinite by the grace of God, and I am incorporeal, not subject to the material conditions of this world, not subject to the mental beliefs of this world, because as I am beyond the boundaries of the physical universe or the mental universe. I fill all space. I permeate the mental and the physical atmosphere and govern it. It cannot govern me. I must govern it. This is the principle. The I of your being is spiritual. The I of your being is spirit. The I of your being is incorporeal life. The I of your being is infinite intelligence, infinite wisdom. The eye of your being is the law unto your experience. The eye of your being is the law unto your experience without you having to take thought. You do not have to take thought what you shall eat or what you shall drink or wherewithal you shall be clothed, but you do have to know your true identity. I and my Father are one, and I am that I am. I am He. This is my true identity. And now, as I look in the mirror, I realize that I'm not seeing me. I'm only seeing the externalized state of my human consciousness. And this is enough to remind me that I'd better rise above sin and have a better consciousness in order to show forth a better body. In practicing the presence, you have the chapter Love Thy Neighbor. In the art of spiritual healing, you have the chapter Relationship of Oneness. And studying these, you will come to the realization not only that I am incorporeal, spiritual, you will ultimately see that I am you. In other words, there is only one I, one ego, one infinite being. And the mind of me is the mind of you. The life of me is the life of you. The soul of me is the soul of you. And for this reason the Master could teach, inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Why? Because all of these, least one of these is me. And I am they. And what I do of good is a good that I am doing unto myself. Any evil that I do, regardless of its effect on others, is an evil that must return unto me. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. There is no way to break the karmic law of as ye sow, so shall ye reap, except one. When you rise to the realization of your true identity as I, you'll no longer do good to anyone, and you'll no longer do evil to anyone, and then you will be beyond karma. And that's what we're trying to bring out in this very work of the infinite way. Let's not do good for anyone. Just let's not. Just let the Spirit of God work through us and do what it will, while we keep that little I out here. Let us not do good, and let us not believe that we do good, and let nobody convince us that we do good. For if we can accept our true identity as I, it is I, God, that is doing the good. And once we realize that, we have lost the capacity to do evil. You don't have to train yourself not to do evil. You don't have to train yourself not to be abusive. All you have to do is live in the realization that I and my Father are one, and I, the Father, is working through the Son. Therefore, I can take no credit for good. I can be impersonal and impartial in the good that flows through me, and unlimited. Because now, especially in our work, there's no need to limit ourselves as to how many patients we can take care of, since we're not really going to take care of any. That is what we are going to learn. That I don't have to take care of the parents, I do. I, the Father within me. And in the degree that I realize this, 1,000, 10,000 can reach out for help and receive it, because it is there reaching out and touching that awareness of the I that I am that meets their need. I could be the really, I don't mean I could be, no, I haven't that capacity, but some people could be really the best men and women in all the world and never heal a headache. Charitable, benevolent, loving, considerate, and still never heal a headache. Why? Because your human qualities are not spiritual, and your human qualities do not heal. It is when you have transcended your human qualities and realized I, incorporeal, spiritual I, is the Savior, the Master, the Healer, that which forgives, that which raises from the dead. It is not my human understanding, nor is it my human love for this world. It isn't that at all. There are loads of people who just love this world and all the people in it, and they suffer just as much as the people who are suffering in the world, and are unable to stop that suffering. Sympathy doesn't stop anyone suffering. No. The power to restore harmony rests in the realization of our true identity, who I am and who you are. And when I know that I am, and that you are the I am that I am, and that I am the I am that you are, we'll soon discover there is not a patient and a practitioner and a God. Don't hesitate. Go back to spiritual interpretation of Scripture and follow that and learn that there is no such thing as patient, practitioner, and God. There is only I. And if I abide in that truth and let that truth abide in me, I will bear fruit richly in healings, in restoring relationships. As you study the 2 chapters that I mentioned in Practicing the Presence and Art of Spiritual Healing, you will more and more realize the nature of the I, that I am. And you will not associate it with a sinner or a non-sinner. Psychologically, it's very difficult to remove sin from anyone. Spiritually, it doesn't have to be removed, because in the realization of this I that I am, the capacity for false appetite, the capacity for sin disappears, and we find ourselves one with each other. Now, in the religious teachings of the world, you will find that the entire basis is one power overcoming another power. God is the good power, and devil is the bad power. Or in philosophy, good is the good power and evil is the bad power. And in metaphysics, divine mind is the good power and mortal mind is the bad power. And so you are always dealing with the good overcoming the evil, the greater overcoming the lesser. But all of this stops when you come to the message of the infinite way. You are not supposed to use truth to overcome evil. You are not supposed to go to God and have God heal disease, or sin, or fear. In the infinite way, you realize God as infinite, omnipotent, omnipresence, And now what have you to remove or heal? And who have you to reform? God? And God being infinite is the only. Now, once you perceive this, you will not have the relationship of practitioner, patient, and God, and how are we going to get the three together? Or how are we going to find a practitioner with enough influence with God to bring him down to the patient? That's done away with in the infinite way. In the infinite way, you stand fast on the true relationship of I. I am me, I am you, I am he, I am thou. We are incorporeal being. Abide in this truth, and the appearances of sense will fade out as darkness does when light is introduced. Don't try to think of the infinite way as having a pull with God, an influence with God. Don't think of the infinite way as a new power that's going to be used over evil. No. In every way that is possible to pray, people have been praying to God to overcome the evils of this world, and they haven't done it yet. In every way that's possible to pray, people have tried to bring the influence of God to earth, and they haven't succeeded yet. There's only one way in which it is going to be accomplished, and that is through an understanding of the nature of spiritual power. What is spiritual power? Since spirit is infinite, there is no other power. And so we have no using spiritual power. We have no degrees of spiritual power. But on the other hand, we have no powers contending with spiritual power, and therein lies the secret. Once you have no powers contending with the spiritual power, you will understand spiritual power. Spiritual power is divine being, the light of the world, spiritual consciousness, in which is no darkness at all. Watch this. Carry out of this class with you this principle of oneness. This principle of not using God, not using truth, not trying to heal disease, not trying to reform sinners, not trying to raise the dead, and yet doing all these things without trying, without power, without using, just by dwelling in the secret place of the Most High, in your real, true identity, by abiding in this word of oneness, I-ness, infinite being, and letting this truth make you free of the universal belief in two powers, of the universal belief in a selfhood apart from God. Every time that you are called upon to give a treatment, you are starting out with two people, the patient and the practitioner, sometimes three, and a God. Now your treatment is not ended until you've brought all three into one, until you have no God to do anything and no patient to have anything done to. And then you'll find you're only left with yourself. And yourself is infinite being, and it includes you, and it includes me, and it includes God. We are one. No treatment is complete while you have patient, practitioner, and God. No treatment is complete while you have God and a patient. No treatment is complete until you have ruled out God, ruled out the patient, and been left with only me, myself. The I that I am, which is the I of you. And this I, spiritual being, this is the law of life, the law of light. Jesus didn't even have himself in bread. He says, I am the bread. He did not have himself resurrected. He said, I am the resurrection. He couldn't have two-ness. He couldn't be resurrected. He is the resurrection. He couldn't restore health. He is the health of thy countenance. All bound up in is and am. Is and am. Do you see that? Until you see that, you'll just be going back to old theology or old metaphysics and trying to use one power over another and wondering how to do it and not realizing that you won't succeed. It's been tried for so many thousands of years that if there were a way to succeed, someone would have found it before now. But the secret is, what is spiritual power? And eventually, through your meditations, you'll come to see, I am. And you'll rest in this word. Now, this next question takes us back to a very interesting experience. What is the infinite way policy relative to titles? Well, it doesn't have any policy because it doesn't have any titles, so it doesn't have to have a policy regarding titles. But it brings up a very interesting question. No, not question, idea. Did you know that as you advance from one state of consciousness, spiritual consciousness, to another, that your name changes? And with every change of consciousness, your name changes. Have you realized, this has been true all throughout the centuries, that everyone upon illumination was given a new name? Everyone. And even in our modern days, in the Orient, when a student attains illumination, the teacher gives them a new name. And they discard their old name and their family name for this new name. The master followed the same practice. You will remember he changed Simon's name to Peter. Undoubtedly, and Saul became Paul. All of the disciples lost their old names and had new ones. And so it is in our very most modern time. Father Divine uses that same practice. As soon as one of his students attains sufficient light, he takes their family name away from them and gives them a new name. And I can tell you that in my youth, I was very proud of my name, and especially the middle name. It had been a family tradition for I don't know how many generations, for one, the eldest son, to be Joel Saul Goldsmith, and the next generation to be Saul Joel Goldsmith, and then so on down the line. And so my grandfather was Joel Saul, and my father was Saul Joel, and I was Joel Saul. And I was so proud of that you can be assured that not even my school papers omitted that little Saul in the middle. After my first spiritual experience, while writing the name one day, it dawned on me, what am I using that middle name for, that middle initial, that only testifies to a human parentage and doesn't belong to me. And except for legal matters, that was dropped, and to myself I became Joel Goldsmith. And then, just before the advent of the Infinite Way, all of a sudden that Goldsmith disappeared off my letters, and I found that it was just holding me into a human identity and reminding me of certain limitations. And that disappeared. Now, I didn't come to signing my letters Joel just for any outer purpose or to think it up or feel that it's a good policy. It happened in just that way that those names dropped away. And the first one remained for the simple reason that evidently it is my name, individual with me, and expresses my individuality or my qualities. So it is that when I became a Christian Science practitioner, I naturally received the title of CS. And I was very happy to have that, and it went on all my stationery. But with the end of my Christian Science days, those initials dropped away, because they're no part of this consciousness. They're no part of this demonstration. They're no part of my life today, nor is that any part of my life. That is only remains as a memory, and just a faint memory, because this consciousness that I'm in is not the one I was in during those years. Quite a different consciousness. So it is then that in this consciousness, where we are not to have an organization, we are not to have titles, none is provided for. And I'm sure you'll find that you who have titles from your past incarnation, your past state of consciousness, you'll feel that they are about as out of place as last year's clothing, because you're in a different state of consciousness in which the only title that you recognize is the I that I am. You live so with that and recognize that as your sole means of identity, that nothing else will be important to you. And that's not a policy. That's just living the life as I have lived it in my experience. How you will live it will be yours. Only don't give anyone the impression in any way that you are bearing an infinite way title, because it may mislead them. There aren't any infinite way titles. Let's have a rest.